Hi, this is Kevin Schoessow with the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension, and I'm out in our teaching and display garden, and I just want to talk a little bit about the benefits of using organic mulch in the garden. There's basically 4 things that mulch can do for us in the garden. The first one is that by covering the bare soil with a nice thick layer of mulch, you can prevent weed seeds from germinating, and it's a good weed barrier. The second benefit of mulch is that it helps keep moisture in the soil. If the soil is bare and exposed to the sun and wind, it'll dry out quicker. So an organic mulch will save that soil moisture, and it will prevent us from having to irrigate or water our plants if it's too dry. Another reason to add mulch is to help moderate soil temperature. That mulch layer will insulate the soil, similar to how it prevents soil moisture from being lost, keeps the soil cooler, and in some cases, especially on cool season crops, this can be a real benefit. On some of our warm season crops, like tomatoes and peppers, mulch could serve the wrong function in keeping the soil too cool. So it's just something you have to keep in mind. Another benefit of using organic mulch is over time, that organic mulch will break down and enrich the soil and add organic matter. Another potential advantage of mulch is that it can help prevent diseases from getting onto our plants. A lot of times, disease spores are in the soil from the previous year from plant debris that was infected, and those spores can splash up onto the bottom leaves of plants, and if we have the soil covered with a nice layer of mulch, those spores can't transfer to the plant. Of course, there can be some disadvantages to using mulch, and perhaps one that's most unfortunate is if your source of mulch is contaminated with weeds or volunteer, what we call crops like rye seed or oats. When you go to spread that mulch or that straw, you can be adding weed seeds to your garden. So knowing the source of the mulch is important, and making sure that you're not unintentionally bringing in weed seeds. The same could be said of diseases. Sometimes mulches might contain disease. That's why I'm a big fan of using composted or partially composted organic materials, because there's less chance of having some of those diseases present. Just want to talk a little bit about the types of organic mulches that we're using out in our teaching and display garden here at the Spooner Ag Research Station. There are 3 kinds that we use quite regular because they're easy to find and collect. The first one would be pine straw, and this is just collected pine needles from underneath white pine. There's red pine that work as well. This has actually been composted, so it was used last year and put in a pile, and we're going to recycle it. So it's got a little bit of extra material in it, but this would be pine straw. Again, fairly weed-free. And this is what we call leaf mold. This is shredded leaves with a little bit of grass clippings that was collected last fall, put into a bin, and it stayed there for about 8 months. So it got rained on, snowed on. It wasn't turned or anything, it was just left to lay. So this is partially decomposed leaf material that was collected just from my backyard or from another source where you've got leaves. I believe these are mostly oak and popple. So this would be another source of organic material that we use for mulching in our display garden. The last type of organic mulch that we have access to here at the research station would be rye straw. So this is straw that was harvested last year after the winter rye was harvested for grain. So you end up with this rye straw. So this would be our 3rd mulch that we use quite extensively out here in our teaching and display garden. Earlier I talked about leaf mold, and that was shredded leaves with little grass clippings that were put in a compost bin and partially decomposed. This is just straight leaves that have not been composted. So these were raked up this spring and shredded with a lawnmower, and this is just dry leaves. The disadvantage of these is they maybe will blow away because they're a little drier than the leaf mold was, but still another wonderful resource that's free if you have trees. Another organic mulch that we have access to here at the research station would be alfalfa hay. So not everybody, of course, is going to know a local farmer who has hay that you could, get some of this to use, but this is freshly cut alfalfa hay, and we're going to just spread this around our plants, let it dry out. It'll mat down just like straw. But what's really, I guess, beneficial with alfalfa is that it's high in protein. It also has other nutrients like potash and phosphorus. So this could also serve as a soil enrichment mulch because of the higher nutrient contents than our high carbon straw or leaf and pine straw. So this is a nice alternative if you can find it. Another possible source of organic mulch in our gardens would be old rotted hay bales or straw. And this is just an example of kind of what that looks like. So these have been sitting here for quite some time, and it looks like this was probably some kind of a straw or very grassy hay, but appears to be weed free. And again, this would make a really good mulch to put on our gardens. Again, if you have access to a farmer, or maybe you did a straw bale garden and this is the leftover of last year's straw bales. So there's plenty of ways we can recycle organic materials and use them in our gardens. But like I've said before, you just have to be aware of the source and the quality, because you don't want to bring anything unintentional into your gardens like weed seed or disease. So I would feel fairly comfortable using these just because they're well aged and they don't appear to be sprouting a bunch of weeds. Before we put any mulch down, we want to do one final weeding. Here we're using a diamond hoe to rake the soil surface and kill off any small seedlings of weeds that have grown in this area before we put the mulch down. The mulch we're using is that leaf mold mulch that I talked about earlier. So this has been partially decomposed. You can see it's got a little bit of moisture left in it. So when you apply the mulch, we want to make sure we get a nice thick layer, just evenly spread it. What I like about this mulch is that it's somewhat moist so that it packs down, and then when it dries it kind of holds its place. So just try to spread this as evenly as possible, and the thicker the better, so that you get a nice thick weed barrier. So this is kind of what it looks like, and you can go through and look at the thickness of the mulch to make sure that you've got the appropriate amount put down. So this is another example of prepping a bed. This happens to be tomatoes, and again, on our warm season crops, we like to put our mulch down after the plants have had a chance to establish. They like that warm soil, so we let it be bare until the plants get a little taller like they are here. So again, here you can see this diamond hoe is kind of raking the weeds out, and now we're able to put down our straw mulch in this case. So again, the thicker it is, the less light that's going to penetrate down to the soil and cause seeds to germinate. Again, they need access to water, seed to soil contact, and sunlight is what causes weed seeds to germinate. So this nice thick layer of organic mulch is a barrier to sunlight, and that's why the weeds in theory should not germinate. So this is just how we do it here at the Spooner Ag Research Station in one of our many beds. Again, this is around the first week in July. In this plot we have watermelon plants, and you can see they've vined out quite a bit already, so we're maybe a little late in getting our mulch put down. But again, we're using our diamond hoe to remove any weeds. Then we go back in and put down our mulch and get the soil covered. And then unfortunately we got to go back in here and carefully untangle some of these vines and get them laid in directions that we would like. And this is a little bit extra work, and had we done this maybe 2 weeks ago, this wouldn't have been quite so much of a task. But it does allow us to put our vines in a position in a nice spread out way so that we're utilizing as much of this space as possible and exposing the plant to as much sunshine as we can. So there's always maintenance that comes with our planting of vegetables, and here's a case in point where we have some squash plants that were put in this bed about a month and a half ago, and they were originally mulched with some rye straw, and you can see that over time we have got some weeds that have filled in here where there was some maybe bare spots. So the thickness of the mulch does matter. So what we need to do now, just to stay on top of this, is we need to go in here and either hand pull some of these weeds or hoe them out, and then we'll go and freshen up all of this organic mulch and make it so that we don't have these weeds causing problems in the future. So sometimes it takes more than one try. So this is a similar bed to the one I just showed, and this has already been weeded. So we went in here and pulled some weeds, did a little bit of hoeing, and now we are in the process of reapplying mulch to fill in where we had bare spots and to thicken up the mulch so that we have a nice barrier so that the weeds can't come through this. So this should be the last time we have to do a lot of maintenance in this particular bed, because these vines are going to really start filling in here in the next couple weeks. Another mulching technique I'd like to talk about is how we can use newspaper or cardboard as an undermulch to our straw, leaf mold, or pine needle straw. So basically we're going to cover the soil surface with a layer of cardboard or a layer of newspaper, and then on top of that we are going to put our straw mulch. The reason to put an additional layer of either newspaper or cardboard down is that it's another barrier to help keep weeds from either germinating and sprouting through our mulch from below, or from weed seeds that might be in our mulch or may fall into our mulch from above. This extra layer just helps minimize some of those weeds from germinating. Both the newspaper and the cardboard will decompose over time, so it's just another method of mulching and using common materials that we have. Again, the reason we do this is we provide an extra layer between the mulch and the soil surface, so any volunteer rye seeds or other seeds that might be in our mulch will have less of a chance to germinate. The cardboard and the newspaper will break down over time and be worked back into the soil. So again, this is another technique of mulching. It does require a little bit more effort and perhaps is not suited for all situations. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about the benefits of using organic mulch in your gardens. And it's something that I encourage all gardeners to consider. And just like anything, start small, understand the pros and cons of putting mulch around your plants, the timing of when you put it down, and certainly keep in mind the source of your mulch, because we want nice, clean, weed-free, disease-free mulch if we can find it. So mulch has many purposes, and it's a wonderful asset to our garden and to our soil.